Hello, it's 10 a.m. on Monday, the 30th of March. You're tuned in to our mid-morning newscast here on Arirang TV. It's great to have you with us on this warm but rather dusty day here in Seoul. I'm Mark Broome. Let's take a look at the headlines. In a rare coming together, President Park Geun-hye holds a brief conversation with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe on the sidelines of the state funeral of Singapore's founder, Lee Kuan Yew. Korea is going to pump an extra $18 billion into long-term fixed-rate mortgages to meet the enormous demand for a new government lending program aimed at tackling Korea's massive household debt. Plus, DNA belonging to 78 people has been found at the site of the Germanwings air disaster. It was brief and only a few words were shared, but President Park Geun-hye briefly met with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe at a reception following Lee Kuan Yew's funeral in Singapore, while Prime Minister Abe thanked President Park for making a recent trilateral foreign ministers meeting with China a success. The Korean president said the three countries should take necessary steps to carry out what was agreed at the talks. There had been speculation over what the two leaders might say to each other in Singapore, as they haven't held official talks amid strained bilateral ties over historical and territorial differences. President Park also met with Chinese Vice President Lee Kuan-yew. Both expressed hope for closer cooperation on the China-led Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank following Korea's announcement last week that it would join. Singapore and the world bid a final farewell to the city-state's beloved founding father on Sunday, Lee Kuan Yew. President Park Geun-hye, who has maintained close relations with the former Prime Minister, attended his funeral, as we just heard there, along with dozens of other world leaders. Our Choi-son reports.
Under a heavy downpour, thousands of Singaporeans packed the streets of the city-state on Sunday to express their love and appreciation for Lee Kuan Yew, who died Monday at the age of 91. From the Parliament House, where the body has been laid since Wednesday, the former Prime Minister's coffin made a final tour of the city, the place of Lee's 6 decades-long political legacy. Dozens of former and current world leaders came to pay their respects at the state funeral. President Park Geun-hye, whose special relationship with the former Prime Minister dates back to her father's presidency in 1979, was also there. In the condolence book, she wrote that Lee was a monumental leader whose name will remain forever engraved in the pages of world history. Outside the funeral venue, people gathered at tribute sites across Singapore to remember the statesman recognized for transforming the former British outpost to a global trading and financial hub in just a single generation.
He was a great man. Without him, Singapore will not be what it is today.
What he has done is we've never expressed in words. We really appreciate it. That's why we are here to pay tribute to him.
Even those who didn't support Lee's policies on dissent and public order expressed their appreciation for the leader, adding he was like a very strict father.
As I travel around the world and seeing, other countries and comparing to what Singapore has today, we come to realize that what he did was actually for the best for his nation and for his people.
President Park, who returned to Seoul early Monday, has said she hopes to enhance bilateral ties with current Prime Minister Lee Hsien-loong. This, as Seoul, with its growth initiatives, seeks to learn from Singapore's rise to a global financial and distribution hub after overcoming similar obstacles like a lack of resources and a complex geopolitical environment. Choi-son, Arirang News.
Now, it's not often that a Korean president attends a foreign leader's funeral, but President Park had a special connection to Lee Kuan Yew, as did her father, the late President Park Geun-hye. Gwon-swa has more on Lee's special relationship with Korea.
1979 was the year Singapore's first Prime Minister Lee Kuan Yew first visited South Korea for a summit with then-President Park Geun-hye. It's also when he met President Park Geun-hye. She was 22 and the acting First Lady. Since then, Lee made a total of 6 visits to Korea, meeting nearly all the Korean presidents that followed. An eyewitness to Korea's rapid industrial and agricultural developments, Singapore's founding father spoke highly of President Park Geun-hye's rural development policies. And the admiration was not one-sided. Former President Lee Myung-bak said he was inspired by Lee Kuan Yew's business philosophy even before his Cheongwade years. But Korean leaders did not always see eye to eye with the former prime minister. Once Lee had a heated debate over the political ideology of Asian values, while he focused on culture, late Korean leader Kim Dae-jung championed democracy. At times, Lee unabashedly criticized Korea's conglomerate-focused economy.
With only 2% of asset holdings, families of Korea's top 30 chaebols have been able to control 331 trillion in assets. Fully control board and management over investment is unjust, it's wrong.
Differences aside, Lee Kuan Yew always remained a friend, nurturing diplomatic and economic cooperation between Korea and Singapore over the years. Korean leaders say he's the driving force behind close bilateral ties to this day. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
Now, an official at the U.S. Defense Department has admitted that the country's missile defense system, known as THAAD, could be more reliable. The Pentagon's Director of Operational Test and Evaluation, Michael Gilmore, says the system has not shown a steady increase in its ability to shoot down ballistic missiles. He noted some cases where the system actually malfunctioned in poor weather conditions. Gilmore also said more training is needed for the troops who operate and maintain THAAD, but operational needs and a lack of resources are falling behind demand. The US has been pushing South Korea to deploy a THAAD battery here, saying it'll better protect the country against North Korea's ballistic missile threats. The Korean government is pumping an additional $18 billion into a new program that allows mortgage borrowers to switch to low, fixed-rate loans as part of efforts to tackle the country's snowballing household debt. The Financial Services Commission says the second phase of the program will prioritize borrowers in the low-income bracket after the first loans were snapped up in a matter of 4 days last week. Authorities expect the new program will help borrowers lower their household debt by allowing them to repay their loans over a longer period of time. And these new mortgage rates are going to be between 2.5% to 2.7%, and that is lower than the 3% range previously offered. Korea's total household debt of roughly $900 billion is seen as a huge stumbling block to boosting consumer spending and reviving the economy. Korea and Vietnam have initialed their free trade agreement following a series of bilateral trade negotiations that were completed late last year. Korea's trade ministry said on Sunday that the deal was done in Seoul on Saturday. The two countries aim to formally sign the trade pact within the first half of this year and then put it into effect before the year is out. Under this deal, Korea and Vietnam will remove import tariffs on more than 90% of trade items except for rice, which is a sensitive item for Korean farmers. The Trade Ministry expects the deal to help Korea's small and mid-sized businesses, particularly those in textiles, auto parts and electronics, to expand their exports to Vietnam. Korean manufacturers are feeling pretty positive about their business conditions for the upcoming quarter. According to a poll of more than 3,000 companies by the Korea Institute for Industrial Economics and Trade, the Business Survey Index for the manufacturing sector has risen 19 points from the previous quarter to 110 for the April to June period. Now, a reading above 100 means optimists outnumber pessimists. The survey attributes the positive outlook to favourable conditions at home and abroad, namely the US economic recovery and a rate cut by the Bank of Korea early this month to a record low of 1.75%. Now, for this week's Industry Insight, we delve into Korea's hotel industry. And world-famous hotel chains may have an edge in Seoul when it comes to brand recognition, but when it comes to customer preference, The winner is not an international franchise, and as our Song Ji-sun tells us, there's a new trend towards diversification in the industry that's helping local chains weather some unexpected changes.
Korea has its fair share of global luxury hotels. But when it comes to selecting a venue for celebrity weddings or hosting VIPs, it's the local chains that shine. In the latest survey on preferred hotel brands, local chains like Silla and Lotte came out on top over internationally renowned brands.
The service standards set by global brands may not necessarily reflect the unique service expectation and culture of the local users. On the other hand, local brands like Silla and Lotte have spent many years researching the specific needs and preferences of Korean guests and fine-tuning the product to their needs.
Domestic hotel chains also have an advantage when it comes to revamping their facilities. They have a proven revenue stream that's separate from the hospitality side of the business.
Korean hotels may be better known for hosting VIP guests like foreign leaders and providing venues for celebrity weddings. But the big money doesn't come from room rates or from the high-profile functions. Most of the revenue actually comes from their duty-free businesses.
Lotte and Silla dominate the local duty-free market, and they're also expanding overseas to airports in Singapore and Guam. They've also been quick to get a jump on a different segment of the local hotel market. The two domestic chains are building new mid-range and business hotels, catering to visitors seeking budget rooms with quality services. And given that Korea's hotel industry is expanding by the year, especially with the rapid rise in the number of Chinese tourists to Korea, the hotel room supply is expected to fall short of demand, especially in the capital. Experts say these moves to diversify are helping the industry become more resilient, but they also point out that the local chains must prepare for changes in the market, like the recent drop in the number of Japanese tourists to Korea on the back of the weekend. They encourage hotels to devise strategies for attracting visitors from a variety of countries to mitigate the volatility in the industry. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News.
Now, on the global front, some encouraging news in the recovery efforts ongoing at the site of the Germanwings crash in the French Alps. For more on this and other global stories, we'll connect to Eunice Kim at the News Centre. Now, Eunice, we understand there is substantial progress in identifying the remains of the victims.
Good morning, Mark. That's right. A lead investigator in France says about half of the Germanwings victims have been identified using traces of DNA. The impact of the crash was so strong that not a single body had been found intact. The investigators said a team of dozens of doctors, dentists, and police specialists have isolated 78 DNA strands from recovered body parts, of which hundreds were collected over the past 5 days or so. The search for the second black box, the flight data recorder, is also continuing among the steep slopes of up to 60 degrees as a road is being built to the crash site to allow access to grieving relatives of the 150 people on board. This as reports surfaced over the weekend in Germany suggesting the co-pilot Andreas Lubitz was not fit to fly last Tuesday, possibly suffering from a detached retina. They also cited investigators saying the 27-year-old was treated by several neurologists and psychiatrists and that a number of medications were found at his apartment. A German tabloid, Bild, carried an interview with a purported ex-girlfriend who recalled Lubitz speaking of a plan to execute a spectacular gesture so that, quote, everyone will know my name and remember it. And with the likelihood that Flight 9525 was crashed by its co-pilot on purpose, the debate over pilotless planes has been revived. For more on what it would take to get a pilotless plane off the ground, our Kim Ji-yeon reports.
Speculation that a 27-year-old co-pilot intentionally crashed a plane has led some to question whether planes might be safer without pilots. Advocates of the idea say that if planes were fully automated, the tragedy of Germanwings Flight 9525 could have been averted. The co-pilot has reportedly prevented the captain from re-entering the cockpit after he left, before sending the plane into a descent that led to the crash. The disaster has already led to calls in Europe for a rule requiring that 2 pilots be in the cockpit at all times. Self-flying aircraft that can be controlled from the ground are not entirely new. Drones have been used for military missions for years. The U.S. military flies Global Hawk drones nearly the size of a Boeing 737 passenger jet. And Boeing says it's developed fully automated planes to prevent hijackings. But barriers remain to get the technology off the ground. For one, insurers are unlikely to cover commercial planes that fly without pilots due to the potential unreliability involved. Then there are labor unions, which are concerned that self-flying planes will leave pilots without jobs. Critics also say self-flying aircrafts have their own problems, including an increased vulnerability to hacking. Kim Jeong, Arirang News.
Yeah, I can't see that getting off the ground, literally, that idea, Eunice. Let's turn back to France now, this time for a political story. And voters there took to the polls in a local election on Sunday, and it looks like the incumbent leadership of President François Hollande took a severe beating.
That's right. Even Prime Minister Manuel Valls acknowledged that the ruling socialists had suffered a setback in these polls, as former President Nicolas Sarkozy said the exit poll results showed voters had massively rejected the policies of François Hollande and his government. Exit polls results showed a giant swing to the right, as Sarkozy's conservative UMP party and right-wing allies were poised to secure as many as 71 council seats out of the possible 98. The local elections are seen as a barometer of what's to come in future elections, including the presidential polls in 2017, in which Sarkozy is widely speculated to run. It appears voters approved of the former French leader's tactic to ally with centrists while punishing the Hollande government for failing to turn around a slumping economy, Mark.
So we could be seeing Sarkozy as president again in a couple of years' time. Well, thank you very much.
Possibly, yeah.
Thank you very much, as always, Eunice, and we'll see you back at noon.
You bet.
Scientists from Korea and the US have released some promising new research for the treatment of autoimmune disorders. Now, the research focuses on T cells, which adjust the body's immune system and prevent it from attacking its own cells and tissues. Our Son Jung-in reports.
A team of co-researchers from the Korea Research Institute of Bioscience and Biotechnology and Harvard Medical School believes that regulatory T cells formed right after birth may be the key to suppressing autoimmune disorders.
Regulatory T cells in a newborn baby are much more effective in tackling autoimmunity or metabolic disease. This new discovery could be the key in developing treatment for cell disorders.
The researchers confirmed that newborn T cells are much more effective than T cells produced in adulthood. Regulatory T cells are suppressive cells that are essential to modulate the immune system. A deficiency of these cells can lead to the development of autoimmune disorders where the body attacks its own cells and tissues, for example, type 1 diabetes or thyroid disease. The researchers experimented on mice with organs damaged by an autoimmune disorder. Mice injected with newborn regulatory T cells showed significant recovery, whereas mice injected with adult regulatory T cells showed no signs of improvement. They also found that regulatory T cells from newborns had more vitality and movement, reflecting higher suppression abilities in the autoimmune system. The team anticipates this discovery will serve as a turning point for the development of cell disorder treatments and may also advance research on anti-aging medicine. The results of the study were featured in the March issue of the medical journal Science. Son Jung-in, Arirang News.
And a good Monday morning to you all as we kick things off in rhythmic gymnastics, where Son Yeon-jae went into our first World Cup of the season in Lisbon with 4 new performances for the new season. And not a bad start to the new season as the 21-year-old finishes 3rd in ribbon, clubs, and hoop competitions, but finishes 5th in the ball event as she would finish off with a total score of 72.050 points, good for 4th in individual all-around. But earlier today, she adds her first medal of the season as she finishes with 18.050 in the hoop final, winning a silver in the event for her 12th straight medal finish. And while the rhythmic gymnastics season just kicked off, the 2014-2015 figure skating season came to an end with the conclusion of the World Figure Skating Championships in Shanghai. And for the Korean figure skaters, it was a season of ups and downs. Now, season would come to an end with Park So-yeon finishing 12th overall in the World Championships after a final score of 160.75 points, while Kim Hae-jin would finish off her event, finishing in 19th place after scoring 136.24 points overall. Now, both skaters did improve from last year's World Championships, but still can't seem to improve enough to compete with some of the world's best and fulfill the expectation as the next Kim Yeon-ah. But at the young age of 17, there's still time for improvements as they hope to wow the fans during the 2018 Pyeongchang Winter Games. And speaking of championships, we go over to Game 1 of the best-of-7 KBL Championship Series between the Ulsan Mobis Phoebus and the Wonju Dongbu Promi, as Mobis look to take a 1-game en route to their 3rd straight title. But Dongbu using their famous defense early in the game as they take a slim 18-17 lead after the first quarter before Mobis' offense come alive in the second quarter of the game as they outscored Dongbu 21-11 to take a 38-29 lead going into halftime. But Dongbu keeping it close, making sure Mobis doesn't run away with the game, but it's Mobis' defense in the fourth quarter holding their opponents to just 8 points in the fourth as Mobis takes Game 1 64-54. Now more championship series, this time over to the Women's V-League Championship Series as the IBK Altos went into Game 2 with a 1-0 series lead over Korea Expressway. Now Game 2 IBK off to a great start once again, take the first set 25-21, but Korea Expressway answers back with a 25-20 second set victory. But despite Nicole Fawcett putting up a game-high 34 points, IBK's Destiny Hooker, Park Jung-ah, and Kim Hee-jin all scored double digits as IBK cruises through the rest of the way with a 3-1 victory, as they're now 1 win away from another championship title. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day and see you guys again for your sports needs.
Dramatic swing in temperatures continues today. Readings started out in the single digit, is already breaking into teens and later will lead to early summer-like conditions hovering 20s across the nation. And areas of dense fog will gradually burn off, then a good amount of blue sky will dominate the whole peninsula. But the relatively high level of fine dust sticks around at this hour, including here in the capital, but it's forecasted to return to normal range as the day progresses. Now, taking a look at the readings for today, the daytime high here in Seoul will rise to 20, and Daegu and Gwangju will peak at 24, and Busan will rise to 19 this afternoon. And as for the other regions, Jeju Island and Daejeon should see a high of 19 and 23, and Dokdo peaks at 15. Now we'll have frequent days of moisture this week, so keep the umbrella handy through the week, and it seems like daytime highs will fluctuate a bit, but lows will rise to the warm side. That's all for Korea, and here's the international weather for viewers around the world.
Well, that's all we have for now. Plenty more stories are online. It's also worth checking out our smartphone application for all the latest news and programmes. We'll be back at noon Korea time with our next newscast. So until then, goodbye.